I want to address the doomers for a second. We were on Power Tour. I think there was a period of time, probably 5 years, where every single person we talked to about the car industry was just like, it's over, kids hate cars, the government hates cars, there's nothing cool going on, print is dead, everything sucks, the world is ending. If you still have that vibe today, you have missed probably the greatest 5-year span in the car industry ever. Give me your thoughts on just how fucking badass all the events are, all the car shows are, all the magazines are, all the social is. Like, this is it. This is as good as it gets, according, I think. Where are you on that continuum?
Welcome to the Automotive Advantage. Grow your business and get smarter in just 1 hour.
All right, episode 5 of the Automotive Advantage. We're on the same side, as you can see, which means we have a guest over there, which is super cool. This isn't the greatest, I'm not gonna lie, but we have a lot of things to talk about, so we're just gonna deal with it.
It's okay, we're doing good.
We're doing great.
It's about the guest.
It is about the guest, and look at this. Look at how good he looks over there. The camera's over there.
No.
Okay, he's got it. Jamie, kick us off.
Hey, welcome folks, and welcome Mike Galimi to the Automotive Advantage podcast. Thanks for joining us, pal.
Oh, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
As you know, our focus is to help people with their automotive-based businesses and big companies, little companies, whatever. If you're into cars, we want to help you. And Mike, you're one of the leading experts in media in general about the entire automotive industry. We're thrilled to have you here. Thanks for coming in.
No, it's great. It's great to be here. You know, in town. I got to stop in, check out the new place, and I'm glad to be on the podcast.
Give the folk, Justin, I know you quite well, probably too well. We got stories. We're not going to tell any of them.
No, yep, too well. Yep.
We promised his family wouldn't. Give the folks a background on how you became the leader of Hot Rod from a media and business standpoint. Give us a quick background.
Well, I mean, I guess the usual story is, I don't have a background in journalism or English or anything to do with automotive magazines or media. I was actually a finance major in college, and coming out of college, I did the Wall Street thing as an analyst, and thankfully to you, I started a side hustle, and a side hustle turned into what I thought was a calling in life, and it kind of grew out of control, I guess, about almost 25 years ago. And worked at Muscle Mustangs and Fast Forwards for many years when they were based in New Jersey. Worked my way up from just a staffer up to the senior tech editor. At that point, they had moved to Florida, and I was getting married, so I stayed back, and I dabbled in the freelance world for a bunch, wrote for just about anybody who would give me the time of day, and eventually landed with Pro Media for many, many years, and then left about 3 years ago to come over to Hot Rod as the network director to be with that group. It's kind of the pinnacle for stuff that I do, and have an opportunity to work on Hot Rod was a great deal, thanks to some good friends of mine.
I'm going to cut you off. One of the hardest parts about this industry for people who are getting into it is like, okay, I can't redo that path. Like, I can't be a finance major and drop out and then go to, it's like, I can't do that. What advice would you have for someone who's like 12, 13 years old, who's like, man, I want to do what those guys are doing, but I'm not going to be able to follow that path. So take the path out and just give me like the overlay of like why you think you were successful walking through that journey. Like, what drove you from job to job, forward and forward?
It's, like everything, right? You give it everything you have. And I think no matter what that is, no matter what your path is, you have to be all in on it, especially with a job like this, right? Because it's not only a job, it's also a passion. And there's no faking what we do, right? We've seen the posers that come and try and do what we do, and they're easily identifiable. So you have to be all in on it, and just work hard, right? Be good at whatever you do, be great at it, right? Study the people who are successful, the people you want to emulate, and learn. What are they doing? How are they doing it? I'll argue that it's almost easier to get into what we're doing just because of self-publishing on, or UCG, right? It's you could do it on social media. You could do it on YouTube. And I think it's easier to break in because you can get noticed on your own. It's a matter of now, not only get noticed on your own, but is it worth it to stay your own path as your own brand or to go work for somebody? I think there's two avenues you can go.
When we were coming up, there was no personal brand. You had to work for Hot Rod or Carcraft or GM High Tech or whatever, right? So that was a clear path, I think. It was like, hey, I want to go work at a car magazine. Which one am I going to niche into? How do I get a job there? And then onward. But now, because you can build a personal brand and become famous for that, and then parlay it into that, it is definitely a path that I don't think any of us went through. We're watching people go through it now. But Jamie, do you have any thoughts there for kids coming up that, you've got Connor, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of similar path to maybe Galimi, but like, what do you think someone watching this can take from like, wow, those people got to those jobs by making what seemed like at the time very questionable decisions?
Well, what people won't see about Mike Galimi is how many years he worked for free and how many companies he helped for free and how many racers he gave extra effort to just because they were friends and part of his network. And I think I did that too with Fun Ford Weekend and World Ford Challenge and the start of the NMRA. We got paid, but we really never got paid.
I think the free part I think is a little misrepresented, right? And yeah, you put more into it. And when it's a side hustle and it's your passion, it's easier to do that, right? It's like you're not relying on it to pay the electric bill or, back then it was a cell phone bill, but it was really tiny. And, it's, so yeah, you're not relying on it for your monthly bills. But so it makes it easier to do more for just that little bit. But eventually that scale gets tipped.
So now Mike Galimi's huge. He's in the seat, arguably the most influential media seat in the entire automotive industry. Motor Trend in December gets absorbed by Hearst. Talk us through the transition and then your place in this big empire and just how big is this media company? Give folks an idea of where you're at.
So yeah, we got acquired by Hearst and part of their Hearst Autos portfolio. And before that, it was Motor Trend Group, and when Justin and I worked for that company, it was dramatically different, right? So I came back 3 years ago, and it wasn't the same company, and I knew that, right? It's not like I walked in like, oh, geez. No, it's gone through a lot of transitions, a lot of private equity and changes that they had made, changes in media and what media is today, and so they had shifted to a very heavy TV focus, right? With Motor Trend TV in an entertainment business, and the other side of the business was just there. So we kind of went through that when I first got there. And, when I had taken the job, it was to, help reorganize a lot of the media side of the house. But with the transition over to Hearst and getting acquired by them, it's exactly what we do, right? It was part of Hearst magazines, all, Esquire, Elle, Cosmo, so many, Men's Health. There's so many other titles outside of automotive, but it's still publishing, it's still media, and that's what they do. They're not an entertainment company, there's nothing to do with TV. And so that's the advantage for us, is that now we have an opportunity to have internal systems and processes in place to help grow our business.
It's always seemed like a magazine company is a hard company to run. It's like incredible to me. Like, I think back decades, they were like, this is going to collapse in on itself. It's just impossible to do. Why do you think people are so... I get why big companies are like, oh, we could go buy up a bunch of car magazines and that would be a great way to make money. And then it just gets too top heavy and it collapses on itself. But if you're a publishing company, which you guys are at your core now, tell me about how advantageous that is, right? You're back to your roots of publishing instead of, oh, we're a TV conglomerate and we're also something else and we're trying to get into this and that. Like, does that feel like a much better fit now?
Absolutely. It certainly is. It's exactly, problems that you're facing as a business, everybody else is facing. So you have more than just, one or two voices in the room saying, hey, let's try and do X, Y, Z, to overcome this issue, right? Like, I'm sure we'll talk about it because you guys talk about it every episode. AI. How can we use AI to better our business? Well, now you have, the force of all of these titles. and this big, corporation pushing to help figure out the best course of action to use it for our advantage to increase all of our businesses. Not just, it doesn't matter that we're a hot rod and, a fashion magazine. We're all facing similar challenges in our own way. And so I think as a big group, it's just a lot easier to work through those problems.
What's the day-to-day like for Mike Galimi? Give us the job assignments that you take on every day.
It's a little bit of everything, as I try and describe. I held a similar role at Pro Media, or as how I viewed it is, I'm like the hub, right? And you have your editorial staff, you have your sales staff, you have your production, marketing, social media. You have all these different groups, and I'm kind of the person in the middle that kind of pulls it all together. Right, so sales understands what we're doing so they could sell it better to advertisers or sponsors. Events, how does it tie back to our market? Events are phenomenal at what they do, but it's, well, how does it relate to the hot rod audience? And so my opportunity is to weigh in on so many different groups every day to make sure that hot rod influence is consistent throughout the whole organization. Because then you can imagine it's a big, it's a lot of people that make it all work. So, I take it upon myself to make sure everything is covered and operating the way as it should. Some days it gets a little bit crazy, right? So nothing's perfect, right? It's always a work in progress, as how businesses are. But it's, so I think that would be the day-to-day, right? And I still write. It's still, a passion of mine is to write. So I still try and, write some stories, not as much as I used to, or maybe not everything I want to write about, but I still find time to do that as well.
The way magazines are structured is a mystery to most people. I think all of us have worked in the publishing business, and we understand it. But for a speed shop owner or for an up-and-coming racer or something like that, give me the lay of the land at how a magazine works. Like, if I'm just a speed shop guy and I want an article written about my car and I can't figure out why no one's covering it, who do I go to? I've always told people, find the associate editor, find the lowest person on the totem pole, which is always me, right? And they have to publish and they're looking for stories actively, so start there. But give me the breakdown of what a publisher is, what an editor is, how you interact with the sales team. Kind of break that down from the view of a speed shop owner.
So I think if you're looking for strictly content, and this is one of the great things that, especially coming over to Hearst, there is a huge divide between the groups, right? And when you and I were, at what was Source Interlink many years ago, it was kind of all interconnected in a weird way. Whereas today it's just cool content's cool content. Doesn't matter. I know there was a lot of ad-driven stuff back then, and we don't have that pressure. So if you're looking for coverage, whether it's an engine build, a vehicle build, or something that's going on, it's the sell, right? It's the, why is it cool? Why do people want to read about it? Not like, hey, I got the '69 Camaro. It's awesome. Hundreds of thousands of other people there too. Well, what makes this car so special? Now, and then that's also the hardest part, is you've known, everybody's car to themselves is super special and valuable and the top of their list. So you kind of have to weigh all of that as well. But the pitch to the, to whoever it is, whether it's an editor-in-chief or whomever on staff, is why is it significant? Why do we need to tell this story? For a lot of people, it could be just the story behind it's really cool and the car is the car, but we're using the car to tell a neat story about a father-son project, a family project, just something. And whatever that backstory is. So sometimes that's the catalyst. But, what's great about the digital world and more than just print is we write a ton more than we ever did on a monthly magazine. So those opportunities to tell more stories is there.
Let me ask it a different way. Be strategic about this. If you're going to coach or counsel a speed shop, what trends are hot and what would you tell them to start working on, because that's what you see coming in the next 12 months?
And something you and I talk about all the time, right? 80s and 90s cars. In my opinion, it's hot because it's the demographic that now, the kids are older, you're more established in your career, so you're making, hopefully more money than you ever made. And now it's time for mom or dad to have fun and have that car that they either had and had a park or always wanted. And so I think the 80s and 90s era is there because that generation, the Gen Xers, we're at that point, where we're going back to buy the Fox body, buy the Grand National, buy the IROC, and do it as we imagine it. And then, obviously, I mean, the aftermarket today compared to 30 years ago, 35 years ago, is significantly larger. So I think that's a huge trend. You look at what like Ring Brothers and Troy Trepanier and a lot of these other people on that side of the business are building, and that also tells the trend, right? And we put a lot of emphasis on a lot of those builders come around SEMA time because that do set the trend, right? Like we started seeing Grand Nationals probably 4 years ago at SEMA show, and that was like, this is going to be big, right? You kind of looked at it and you're like, yeah. And now all those cars are starting to be, they've been at the level they're building. It takes 3 or 4 years to build them. And so now you're starting to see those really hit the market and excite people. And it's like, you know what? I'm not going to build the same one as the Dutch boys, but I could build a pretty big-ass Grand National. And so that's, I think that's the trends you should be looking at, what's happening at the big shows and what the big builders are doing.
Yeah, I've begged Mike to stop talking about Grand Nationals so that I can afford them, and the son of a, just refuses to stop talking about Grand Nationals. It's kind of pissing me off, and here he is on our podcast doing it to me again.
See, I feel like I'm at an advantage because I'm building cars so slowly that by the time my cars come around, I'm going to be right on trend here. But like, if Grand Nationals and Fox bodies are the hotness now, if someone is thinking ahead, right, 10 years from now, that means we're into the early 2000s. So start hoarding 4th gen Camaros now, I think, because it's going to come around. But it's so funny how cyclical, it's not cyclical, but how obvious it is that this is going to happen, but also how we all forget, like we all should have bought Demons, put them away, wait 60 years, $1 million, right? It's a very simple trend.
So we're simple and predictable people in this hobby, and so yeah, you're to your point, you are 100% right. I think a lot of those 2000 cars were the best deal going, right? Jamie and I talk about, what are you going to buy today? If you were a 25-year-old person who wants to buy a muscle car, sports car, whatever label you want to put on it, it's hard to find one that's affordable, right? But you know what? 2008 Mustangs have a really nice car, and it aged really well. It still looks modern, and they're pretty affordable. So I think the secondary market for that type of stuff, I don't think we do a good enough job to promote that.
03 Cobra is my new thing I'm on for some reason. I've just been on Facebook Marketplace looking for 03 Cobras. But yeah, they're still, it's funny, they have appreciated more than the Chevy stuff though. The 4th gen Camaros are still 20-ish. The 03 Cobras are 45 now. So it's funny to see the difference in price there. But if anyone's got a lead on an 03 Cobra, let us know.
Yeah, and I think, any special edition, limited quantity vehicle of any year, right? Like a ZL1 Camaro or a Copel Camaro, that, from the 60s, that never lost its value, right? So yeah, so the Terminator, yeah, it's going to be really expensive, but I think a base GT, and I think a 2-valve might be a hard sell, because a 3-valve is not that much more money, and it's a way better car. It's built better, looks are an opinion thing, but in my opinion, they look great, and the value is still there for it. And I think they're built tremendously compared to a new Edge.
I bought an 03 Cobra brand new. It was a project car in 50 Mustang and Superforge magazine, and I think I could find it again if you want to get my car back.
But you sold it and you blew it. You should have just kept it forever. This is never sold.
I'll explain it to you again off camera why I sold it. Okay.
Right. Never sold.
Anyways, back to Mike Galimi, our guest. Mike Galimi, project cars. What do you got coming at Hot Rod that might help people think about trends and help manufacturers think about where you're going to take this industry?
2025 is a year that we are pushing harder to get back into building things, right? And I think with the pandemic and the changes within this company, kind of put that on the side. And so we're bringing it back front and center of building our own stuff. Project X is there. We're freshening it up. It'll never go anywhere. We're trying to unload a couple of cars to kind of restock the inventory. And you know, and that's a big question that goes around our staff room of, you know, what do we build next? We've got a couple ideas. We've got a couple things we're working on that I think, you know, as the year goes on, they'll come out. But it's hard for us just on how we're organized right now to pull off some of the bigger builds. But we're getting there. That's our goal, is to get back to that.
I have a random thought. I think people should name project cars more often. I feel like when a project car has a name, it can like live on longer than just being a random project car. I see so many YouTube builds and so many like social media builds that don't have a name. It's so much easier if I can just be like, oh, Salt, oh, Project X, oh, whatever. So the magazine guys had that right, F-bomb, right?
So yeah, I mean, on that, like, I remember, you know, to have a name meant you were a project car. You know, if your vehicle didn't have a name, it was just a car you did stuff on for a tech story. You know, I had an '07 Mustang that was great. It was never an official project car because it was never named. It was just like, hey, I want to do a blower. Hey, I want to do this. Hey, I want to do that. And we just kind of did it. But yeah, to your point, it's an official project car should have a name. It gives it a personality, it gives it identity. You know, Project X being the pinnacle of that. You know, not just because it was a movie car, but everyone knows Yellow 57, Project X. But yeah, no, the naming is super important. It gives that personality. You feel connected to the vehicle.
Mike, I think one of the differences with your job versus your predecessors is the mounds of data that you're sifting through every day and where the eyeballs and where the attention are on hot rod and media in general. So it's print, it's a website, it's multiple social channels, and then you're watching other outside factors and other brands, influencers fall into that at some space. But talk through what you're seeing, where the attention is on media right now. And you and I have this ongoing conversation. How are you sorting through this? How are you managing this big brand through what is a very distracted media?
You know, Justin says it all the time on this podcast, right? Like, go where your customer is. And for Hot Rod as a brand, it's everywhere, right? We have to be everything to everyone. And so we have to be on Facebook, on Instagram, on, Twitter, TikTok, all of it, right? Website. Some people consume, magazines still in print form, which we still have, but they also consume it in digital, like as if it was a printed magazine digitally. And then obviously a traditional website. So, in terms of media and a media company where it's gotten more complex, before when it was just print, you just had to worry about one issue a month. Here's our stack of 15 stories, 20 stories. I think, Muscle Mustang's maybe 25 when it was in its heyday of thickness, right? 300 plus pages. And, so that side of it, you have to be everywhere, which complicates it. So now you have to have a dedicated social people and going to Hearst is, helping change a lot of the ways we did, different areas outside of our traditional digital and print. So yeah, you have to be everywhere. I mean, there's no excuse not to be anywhere.
What's the modern vibe on web first versus print? For those who don't know, there's been an ongoing debate within the publishing world on, do I print it in the magazine first and then put it on the internet? Do I put it on the internet first and then put it in the magazine? Does the person who reads the magazine even see what's on the internet? Give us the current state of web first versus just publish whenever versus kind of where are you guys at today?
So we are, I believe at Hearst, the only group that does print first. In terms of automotive, obviously I have an intimate knowledge of how Motor Trend operates and what they're working on. They're a very more news-heavy, time-based reporting. Our advantage at Hot Rod is, we have the trends and we're hitting different topics each month, or each issue, I should say, or quarterly. We have the opportunity to have something that lasts longer, a little more evergreen content. So in my opinion, and hopefully my bosses see this and finally see it my way, I think the print first for what we do works. And again, it goes by audience. Who's your customer? And print for us, it's getting the Andrew Link, the Kevin Diassi, the really high end photographers to really present it very well, right? Just from a visual standpoint, it has to be stunning, more so than on digital. And so I think we should be dropping the cover that nobody's seen before, the features that nobody has seen or read about before. To me, that's super important. And again, my colleagues and the people I answer to, they're more on the Motor Trend side. They have a different opinion. They think it should just be, Control P, and there's your issue. Just pick out what you want to put in there. And I think with the hot rod audience, it is a different audience, and we can have that opportunity to be special and be different. Now the crossover is really small, according to our ad sales marketing team. I want to say it's less than 20%. Which I think is really low. So would it matter at that point? I don't think so. Maybe it's more the nostalgia or the creative side of me that's, being stubborn, but I think having a cover that no one has seen before, to me, is very important.
You talked about knowing the customer. You're an expert on thinking about the reader first and generating great content for them. Talk us through who is the reader of Hot Rod now, and then how do you help companies connect with them? That's your other customer, that's your advertiser. Talk through that relationship with both groups.
From a reader perspective, without the other niche titles that this company was known for, I think at one point there was almost 50 niche titles. As I said, we've become the everything. We have to be everything to everybody. But when you look at the digital data and tracking it, Google is still a large part of our viewership. So you do have to look at it and analyze and say, okay, well, these stories seem to be doing really well. We should be on this topic more. So you're using a lot more data-driven decision on what stories are getting done. It's definitely, you have to look at the trends, look what's hot, and then look at the reaction. And then sometimes test that market, right? You can't always say, we know this story always does well. That's great. We're going to do those stories. But we have to test this one because maybe this one's just as good. I say it all the time, like with lately, in 2025, that, we did Summit Racing came out with a new small block Chevy block. And so, okay, I know that's still a good market, still going. And so in talking to those guys, I say, let's do an engine build. It's like, man, do people really want to read about another small block Chevy engine build? It's some of the best performing stuff we've done this year. It's like, how many times can people read about a small block Chevy? But people are still buying those parts. People are still interested in what's out there, what's the latest. So you have to try certain topics or something that are like, I think this would be good. And you talk about the other customer being the advertiser and sponsors. You have to see what they're selling. Because they're selling a lot of something, well then obviously the market's really going after that. So you kind of have to play both sides of it and kind of weigh it out and say, okay, yeah, we can put something together here and we know with a high degree of confidence that this will get the traffic.
I want to know where Mike Galimi is with artificial intelligence. You mentioned it earlier, but how does it come into play in your daily duties? What are the guidelines for you as a content creator? And then how are you using AI to be the best Mike Galimi you can be every day?
I think I'm going to tackle that last part the best, about be the best Mike Galimi every day. And I think, AI is not the best Mike Galimi because that's not Mike Galimi, right? And I think the authenticity is paramount in what we do. Just as influencers would, on social, people are looking at you for your word, right? And if AI is there, right, that's not someone, that's not a trusted source, right? And so for us, it's always been, the veterans that are on our staff, or, the culture we have in the office in terms of content creation, right? And using AI is, to create stories, I think is absolutely the wrong way to do it in our segment. I think because it's that authentic person, and our company feels very strongly. They have a policy, very strong policy in place internally for that, for how you use AI. And we have a lot of tools that they provide to us. Again, being part of a bigger organization of this doing the same thing, you have access to a lot of tools that save time, and I think for us as an editorial staff, it's the time savings that is the most valuable. How can I get back an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a week? Because that's more time I can develop ideas or, build something or do another story, right? And the more you do, the better it's going to be in terms of web traffic. If you did 20 stories this month, well, just imagine how good the traffic would be if you did 30 or 40 as a group, right? So if you can save time, I think AI is for us is a great way to save time, and Jamie, you and I talk about this all the time. Every week I experiment with how can I use AI, in my daily job. Sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does work. I think on one of your episodes, last episode, you talked about just kind of bouncing ideas off of it. On the flight out here, just waiting in the airport to board the plane, I'm just sitting there and just putting in story ideas of just in very surface level research of developing ideas, and I had 5 story ideas right out of the gate, by the gate, the airplane gate, to like share with the team, it's, hey, we should be looking at this stuff, and this is what I found. So I think for that sort of research and ideation, I think it works really, really well. I know you've done analysis for your clients. I've done, SWOT analysis for, our competitors, and it gives you a good idea. Obviously, I tried to use it to create a deck for a presentation, which was not the best use of it, but now I know. But you know what? It got me that much further along on the deck and preparing it that maybe it saved me a half hour, 40 minutes of messing around in, putting a deck together, right? So it's that time factor for me that is ultimately gonna be the positive.
I love using it for idea generation, or not generation, but idea checking, right? Because it's like you can come up with like, oh, what would be the top 5 coolest ways to do a small block cam install story, and it can be like blah blah blah. But have you thought about? And it's like, oh shit, I haven't thought about that, right? It's just like it's like having a little friend around you that you can just bounce dumb ideas off of, and it can be like, have you thought about? Have you thought about? What about? It's like, has that ever been done before? It's like, let me search all of human history to see. It's like, it's just so fast for that stuff. I love that you guys are using it not as a fake writer that gets credit for writing things, but as a great way to just check, like, is this a good idea? Have we ever done this before? I mean, I've seen the Hot Rod archive. Like, there's no way you or anyone could be like, without AI, have we ever done this story before? Like, it would take months to go through the archive. But AI is a perfect way. Like, have we ever done this before? Yeah, you have. It was in this issue. Oh, cool. Let me pull that up. Let me see who wrote it. Let me take some ideas from that. What's a new version of that, right? So super cool for stuff like that.
I mean, just before waiting to get on here, I was on there and I'm in town to meet with a sponsor and an advertiser, and I wanted to see how many stories we did, because I know we've been doing a lot with that group, and I put it in there and I said, hey, give me all the stories with this company in 2025 on hotrod.com. And it shot them all out, right? And then I went back, we have a master, planner, and I went back and just to double check it, right? Because you always got to be careful with the data that it does give you, and it was right, but it saved me a ton of time. I've got the report done that I wanted to present, in tomorrow's meeting, and I went back just to verify it, but it's such a time saver. That that's what you want, right? Like we don't know how much time we have, right? I've got a family, I've got other things I want to do. So if I can save time and not work till midnight every night, hey, that's a bonus.
I want to jump back to when we were talking about how to approach an editor and tell them that your 69 Camaro is different from all the other 69 Camaros. And like AI would be perfect for that. Like, hey, AI, I'm building a 69 Camaro like this. Can you look at every hot rod from 1980 on and tell me, organize them into how many Pro Street 69 Camaros, how many Pro Touring 69 Camaros, what's the trend, what's hot, how many LSs, and then how am I different? What can I take to an editor and be like, hey, I'm the only, you've never featured, this is my one of one Corvette. It was built on a Tuesday, right? Like, how can you do that? There would be no other way to do that other than reading every single one and taking notes forever. But man, if I'm trying to pitch an idea, if I'm a brand trying to pitch an idea, what a great way to just be like, get me all this data and then help me tell this story to someone. So I think that would be a cool use of it.
Smart.
Mike, this podcast exists to help businesses grow, right? And we think there's a real lack for this type of content in our space. You've helped countless companies develop new products, launch new products, tell their story, covering drag races, whatever you've had to do. What kind of general advice do you have for an entrepreneur in the next 6 to 12 months? Like what advice are you giving your buddies at the bar to help them make it through some rough times right now?
I think new products is always, always big, right? If you're a company, you don't have a new product coming, what are you doing? And in that same vein, if you have a new product, what problem does it solve? Tell me why is this important? Why do I need, another small block Chevy engine block? Which apparently the market needed, but tell me that, right? And I think that's what, Summit did a great job of explaining just how big the small block Chevy business still is to them. So I think if you look at some of those examples, why is this intake manifold? Why do you need it? Why is it better? Why are we doing this? And you should be doing that anyway when you're coming to market with something, right? If you're putting together a product, why does the market need this product? Where's the demand, right? Because if you're in business to make 10 of these items and you're in your basement and like you just did it for fun, well, that's cool. But if you're in business to do this to make money, well, then how are you going to sell, 10 a day? And so I think, the why is super important of how it serves the market. Not everything's going to be sexy and flashy like the latest turbocharger. But at the end of the day, like you've created this part for a reason. Why did you create this part?
I've got kind of some wrap-up kind of questions, but
I was going to smash on engineers that just engineer for no reason, but we can skip that. You go.
Save that for another time?
You're safe for now, engineers. You are safe for this one. Your day is coming.
Mike, you got a great run going. You're really leading the industry, and we're grateful for that. Right? You're a super passion-filled guy. How do you have the energy to keep rolling through this? I think I know the answer here, but like, what gets you excited to make Hot Rod great every day?
I have been in the office where you don't want to be in the office, in a previous role. And, for me, it's just getting to do what I love to do. Tell great stories, write, create, work with incredible people. That always helps too, right? Because you could be in a grinder place and it just doesn't do it for you. So I think it's a little bit of everything. What gets me going is just the fact is to keep doing it and just having fun, right? It's like we get to play with cars for a living. Come roadkill nights here in a few weeks, downtown Pontiac. It's it's the greatest single day, but like I leave and it's like I'm on like a 10-day road trip, and every day is slam packed with some of the craziest cars that you're going to see in print, this fall. Some of the coolest parts that you're going to hopefully buy for your car. And I get to do that every day. And, and then that makes it worth it. That gives you the energy like, man, we're doing some cool shit.
I want to address the doomers for a second. We were on Power Tour. I think there was a period of time, probably 5 years, where every single person we talked to about the car industry was just like, it's over, kids hate cars, the government hates cars, there's nothing cool going on, print is dead, everything sucks, the world is ending. If you still have that vibe today, you have missed probably the greatest 5-year span in the car industry ever. Give me your thoughts on just how fucking badass all the events are, all the car shows are, all the magazines are, all the social is. Like, this is it. This is as good as it gets, according, I think. Where are you on that continuum?
100%. I want to address the young kids in cars. So I had to renew my license, and I was at the DMV last week. And the permit window, which was very crowded, and all 16-year-old or young, I should say, high schoolers, several of them had car t-shirts. One had a Hearst line lock t-shirt on, like old school looking one. Two other kids had sport compact shirts on. So the kids aren't into cars, I think is not an accurate assessment. I think the people who say that are disconnected from the people who are, right? So they're not seeing it, so they think it's not, right? It's like an algorithm. Like, oh, if the algorithm didn't serve it to me, that never happened. Well, if you're not looking or seeing it, then you don't understand it. But as far as, the last 5 years, I think it's been booming. The events are insane. We had our 30th anniversary Hot Rod Power Tour, which, anniversaries should be big. It was our biggest ever in 2024. Well, 2025 just crushed it. We probably had the biggest single day we've ever had on Hot Rod Power Tour at 31 years. I think that shows where the market is, but it also shows what you do when you invest in, in your product, right? Because our event team, they have worked really hard to put together a great program. They looked at a lot of the problems some complaints, and you've done a lot of power tours and you've seen a lot of complaints of what doesn't work. So they've tried to address a lot of that and reverse all of it. And so I think it's the investment in your product. I think the market's there. I mean, I think you look at some drag strips that are closing, that sends a bad message, but you look at other areas where they're doing really well, right? Like take Bradenton Motorsports Park. I think it's booming. A great track owner, right? Cletus is obviously involved with that as well. He does a great job. He's in tune with what his client base does. I think you look at Maple Grove Raceway, which was bought a couple years ago. That's doing well. So I mean, there are some losses, but there's also a lot of wins, and I think people love to harp on the losses, and I think they were misguided, and they need to look up and around instead of just focus on the negative.
Yeah, if this podcast or clip finds you and you're like, I haven't been to a car show in 10 years because they're all bullshit and there's nothing going on there, just go. Just pick one. I mean, Indy 500 is not a car show, but it's one of the most amazing spectacles I've ever seen. NHRA is having a great year. All of the hot rod events are great. I mean, we just talked about Woodward. Like, it's just go out there, see it, because you are missing out on what I do believe is the best time in the car industry.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like, you have to show up, right? If you're gonna be the naysayer, well, show up, right? Prove it wrong, right? If that drag strip that's local to you, like, it closed up for a reason. You didn't go to it, right? So get there. It's not a perfect business. It's a hard business. And even when times are booming, places are going to close, right? When, the economy as a whole, when it's buzzing, it's the best it's ever been, companies still go out of business. Companies still go bankrupt. That's just the way it is. I think looking at the negative and getting on social media is so easy to make it appear a lot worse than it is. Look at the part sales, look what companies are doing, and you'll see the positive in that.
And how about you guys? I mean, a lot of people say print is dead or hot rod is old or whatever, but that's not true at all. You've given us some amazing stats, but the brands are thriving, right?
Yeah. You look at it and it's, the media business has changed dramatically. And we've changed with it, right? And we print 4 times a year. We serve an audience that does still consume print as well as we can, just in terms of the financial side of it. But if you look at our website, I look at the Comcast scores or ComScore stuff for everything. For any competitor that you can think of, I've compared them to Hot Rod, and I have yet to find in our segment someone on a ComScore that's bigger than us or even comes within 3x of us. So you look at that size and what we're serving there. I mean, you're looking at almost 1 million unique visitors a month. And I think, people think of Hot Rod Magazine, they think of the print. It's like, well, this is massive compared to anybody else in the market. You look at our social media, over 5 million, I think, on Facebook. I don't know the other numbers. Our YouTube's got over 7 million. Our YouTube now strategy is changing thanks to Hearst. Before it was the TV shows, now, we're getting back to original programming and, curating a content flow there that fits that audience. But you look at the sheer size of what we're doing and it's pretty big.
Mike, you're over 50 now. Still got a long runway to go.
You're 50?
Yeah.
Wow.
it's the stress-free life that I live of playing with cars every day that make me yell.
Oh, I thought you were old. Okay.
Well, at this age, you start looking back. You got a lot of runway, you got a lot of work to do, but at some point when you start to slow down and you start looking back, what do you want to have accomplished in addition to everything you've done already in this space?
Like everything, just leave what you've worked on better than how you found it. And I think that's everything in life. I like to think that, my time at the previous companies I left them better than I came in at. And I hope to do the same here, bring it back to prominence in, what I think is successful. Obviously, financially, that's, obviously always a goal for any business. But yeah, just leave it better than I found it.
I'm going to wrap this up unless you got another question.
Call it.
Mike Galimi, people are going to want to see you. They're going to want to get in touch with you. They're going to want to get their 69 Camaro featured in Hot Rod.
Obviously.
How do I get a hold of you if I want to advertise in Hot Rod?
Just reach out to me via email, which is available on our hotrod.com website. That's probably the easiest way from a business perspective. If you're a fan or a reader or anything else you want to yell at me, just send an email.
All right, so you got to hear direct all hate mail directly to Mike Galimi's personal email at Hot Rod.
He's going to be busy for the next couple of weeks, I got a feeling.
I love it.
Mike, thanks for coming on. It's been a true pleasure. You're one of our dearest friends, and for you to be the first guest on the Automotive Advantage podcast, we really appreciate you coming in. It's just how it worked out, but thank you.
No, it's great. I appreciate you guys sitting down, chatting. I'll talk about this stuff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So to sit here with you guys and chit-chat, and hopefully, the viewers get something out of it and can build a better car, get their 69 Camaro sold as to why we should feature it or whatever.
Awesome.
That's the pod.
Thanks for watching, folks.